Welcome back to the Growth Hack Franchise Marketing Unleashed. I'm Marcus, founder of AdCloud, and today's topic is that feeling of burnout, but with a twist. You might not be burned out, you might just be busy doing all the wrong things. And joining me to call out all the productivity traps we fall into is our creative director, Mckenzie.
Okay, Marcus, I've got to ask, how many people do you think are actually burned out, and how many are just exhausted from doing stuff that doesn't actually matter?
I think it's the majority. I think that, especially for entrepreneurs and self starters, I think it's really hard to disconnect and prioritize and find people that can fill in the gaps and do the smaller tasks or the mundane task. And we often find ourselves doing everything or trying to do everything because naturally that's how we built it. When you're shoestring budget and your grassroots, that's how you're building it. And it becomes hard to disassociate yourself and say, okay, hey, I trust you enough to take this. I've built this company to this place. You take this and do it and trust that you're going to do it properly. That whole trust but verify. But I think that as entrepreneurs, that is our Achilles heel. I think it's our biggest holdback for sure. But we have to find a way to delegate, know that sometimes that's going to fail, but be okay with that. But again, I think it affects everyone. There are times with certain tasks or aspects of the business that I struggle to give that away and say, you take this on. I trust that you're going to get it right and do it right. Not necessarily because I don't believe in the people that I've hired or that. It's more a nature of I care so much about our clients that I am fearful to have them experience anything other than the bar that I've already set for the company. And so it's that fine line to walk to figure out how to delegate, but still verify and be engaged.
Right. So let's talk about that a little bit in your aspect because I obviously know a little bit from behind the scenes. You are kind of struggling with giving up some of that control. And how do you find that fine line of, okay, what do I keep in my wheelhouse that I have to continue doing without getting burnout, but also what could I hand off to someone else? How do you balance that list?
Still figuring it out. But I think it has a lot to do with your inner circle. I think it has a lot to do with the people around you, the people that you trust to do. And our industry, it's a little tricky because it's multi-client management. If you're a brick and mortar, it's different. You have staff that come in and they do certain things. Now you still want to look at like, hey, are you going to be a great people person? Are you going to be someone that's relatable, et cetera? On our end, a minor fault could cost thousands. And so we have to be a little bit more intricate on who and how and why and who meters that. For us, like for me, giving away certain parts of the company as far as management wise, I have to think about, okay, I'm going to give that away, but either myself or someone else has to weekly or daily have a check-in and say, okay, are we are we meeting the standard? Is the bar set? Are we there? And if we're not, we have to pivot quickly because this person isn't meeting that expectation, whether that's lack of training or it's just right person, wrong seat, whatever those things are. And so again, I think in our industry, it's much harder to scale at that point because any minor mistake can cost the clients money, then cost AdCloud money, et cetera.
Right. So obviously that is more of a when you have too many important tasks problem. But what about the people that are, let's say, color coding their Google Calendar for the fourth time this week? Like doing things that maybe feel super important at the time, but they're really wasting their time. How would you approach that type of person and sort of realign their priorities list?
I think for the majority of business owners and entrepreneurs or whatever you're doing, even if you're working a 9 to 5, some type of remote job, visit automation first. Right. This doesn't mean you have to go out and spend crazy salaries to get someone to do it and have a PA and all of those things. I think you look at automation first. Most, especially if they are digital based, Google Sheets, porting data, whatever those things are, sending emails, email replies, most of those things can be automated. I always go to like, okay, what things can I automate? Leads to this specific platform or data points into this specific dashboard. Like all of those things can be automated. You should never be manually updating or dropping a spreadsheet. I mean, all of those things should be automated. And I think a lot of people just think that automation is potentially more complicated than it actually is. Talk a lot about the platform Zapier. You can go in there and practically for now, there are some things that sure you can go down a rabbit hole and spend a week developing, but for most tasks, you're able to build, they're almost pre-built for you, and you can automate a lot of those things, and that'll save you hours a week. There's also from email management. I mean, that's like actually, I think across the board, if you were to ask any business owner, like client support, email response, I mean, that's what takes up a lot of our time. And there's a new platform called Fixer, Fyxer.ai, and it's a great, it'll understand the way you reply to things as emails come through. It'll auto draft replies. They're saved in a draft. You go through, you can edit, adjust the copy before pressing send. And it seems somewhat ridiculous, but over when I would say for me on average, I probably reply to 200 plus emails a week. It saves a lot of time when you're saving minutes off of each email and you're not like, oh, I got to go in now. I've got to draft this entire response based on their request. So there are little things. Just do a simple Google search and say like automation tools to make my life easier. But start automation first and then look at the things that you can't automate that need real person interaction or some version of that and hiring or figuring out if you have current staff that maybe has more bandwidth that can do certain things. Again, like look internal and then go external just because it's easier, it's going to be more cost efficient, but you should always start with automation and see what you can kind of relieve from your plate. But I think also you have to ask yourself the question, are you the best at what you're doing? Or is there something you are much better at that you should be focusing on more beneficial to your company to offload the rest of it? Because that's going to create inherent growth. And that's every entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs naturally are good at many things, but I think we're great at a few. I think for some, it's management of people. I think it's culture. For others, it is more like on the technology, data integration, visionaries. And there are people that have specialties in certain places, but really fine tuning what you're great at, maybe holding on to that piece and shipping out everything else.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. But what about as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, there has to be a tendency to get stuck on little things that maybe you're sort of fixated on. Like I'm thinking for myself in graphic design, like in social media, if I'm stuck on trying to find the perfect audio for a video, I find myself wasting so much time just searching for that one. And yes, it's important, but I'm wasting a lot of time doing it. Do you find yourself struggling to not fixate on little things that are wasting time?
I feel like I've gotten a lot better at that. I used to do this 20-minute practice where like if it was taking any longer than 20 minutes, you moved on.
Oh,
There's
that's good.
no because it was too easy. And then you realize like you have 100 things on your task list that you didn't get to because you spent all your time focused on this one thing that didn't really move the needle. And a lot of my learnings, we used to do this big thing called it was like 10x meetings, but you would hierarchy your to-do list and really figure out, okay, here are the top things today that can move the needle in the company, whether that's revenue oriented, it's client oriented, whatever those things are. And now here's the other five important, but maybe don't make as big of an impact. So if those end up getting shifted to the next day, that's okay as long as I get these 3 to 5 done. And so those become your primary concern for the day versus the others. Even if you don't get to all five of the most important the next day, you still start there. You don't jump down to number seven. It's important for everyone to understand like the 80-20 rule. But perfection is like an ongoing, it's never attainable. Like it'll never be there. I always hear all the time, like, oh, I wish the site could be better. I wish this, I wish that. I'm guilty of it too. Like naturally, we have this mindset of like, I want it to be perfect. It'll never be perfect. Get it to 80% and ship it, and then, work on the perfection. If you can get to 80% completion, send it off, test it, do all those things. I think on things like you said, like image creation, there's no need to get stuck. Just grab and go within reason. I think that's the biggest thing. But for many people, I think setting a timer 20 minutes, I need to move on because I have 10 things to do today and I'm only here for X amount of hours. So that means I have 20 minutes per task. And if you can't complete it in 20 minutes, it's time to move on. And then if you find that you're just not completing tasks week over week and now you've got 400 tasks, that tells you that, hey, you either need to automate or find someone to help because there's too much for one person to handle.
Again, as business owners and entrepreneurs, you have all these tasks, you have all these things that have to be done, but there also has to be time for brainstorming, for coming up with new ideas, for just sitting down and thinking about what is the next step. How do you fit that into your work week? Do you set aside a certain amount of time for that, or how does that work for you?
Personally, it's usually when I'm working out, when I'm at the gym. Like that is my natural, or just early in the morning, either like before a workout or during a workout, or like the treadmill cool down. Like that is normally when I come up with ideas or I think through certain business aspects, operations, just because that is my me time. I don't have like kids pulling at me. I like all the things, right? And no one's calling me at 4 o'clock in the morning. I've always said like between 4 and about 6:30 a.m. is my most productive time because no one's calling me. No one's awake. I'm the only one I feel like in the world awake right now. There's none of that. It's so much harder post 7. You get the kids, you're getting breakfast, you're getting to the office, everyone wants to talk to you. And it's so hard to get into that zone. I used to do this practice, which I'd love to get back to, but it was you would block out on your calendar, and I think most people should maybe start this way, but block out on your calendar and at least an hour. I think I used to do like 2 hours every week. So this is a recurring meeting block with yourself. You had a meeting with someone else that was important and you would make it happen. You block it out every week, 1 to 3 every Wednesday, whatever that is. The rule is you go now, most are gonna look at me crazy because everyone knows I hate pen and paper. So I would use like a not an iPad, but I can't think of what it's called, but it's here on the desk somewhere. A little ThinkPad, so it's all digital and it transcribes your notes. But essentially, pen and paper, no phone, nothing. You go and you find a place to sit away from screens, and all you are doing is thinking about working on the business, not working in it, working on the business. What can be better, what's going wrong. That is your time to solely really think about because so many times we get so focused on working in the business, we forget to work on the business. And then we look back 12 months, 24 months, and we're like, gosh, we missed a lot of growth potential, et cetera, because we were so in the weeds and working in it. So take the time. Maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 2 hours if you can give that. Because what I find is when you do that, it kind of takes time to get into that mode. You're gonna sit in there and you naturally your brain's all scat. I know for me, like quiet time for me is hard because my brain goes a million miles an hour. It's thinking like, what's happening? Or some people would say go to therapy for that. But the quiet time is not great for me. But it usually takes me a little bit to like get into that mode and start to become creative again. But what I find is that it allows me to kind of get in touch a little bit more with the entrepreneur side of Marcus that I love and fell in love with because so many times you can get just stuck in the hamster wheel, and that's when burnout occurs. That's when, like, you're just like, "Ah, I'm my own employee." It's not really that fun. Like, entrepreneurs like to launch things and think up and be creative and be visionaries. An old friend of mine, he said he loved starting things, incubator, like those types of things, but then once it got to a certain level, he was like, "I'm done. I wanna go back to the startup mode because that is my passion is." And some people have the appetite for that. Others are like, I wanna stay in the safe zone and cruise control." But he was a big person on practicing that weekly, like, I think he did like a 3-hour break weekly, just solely focusing on the business and thinking through what is the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months look like, and how is it evolving over time based on the real-time data that you have and how things are going in your business currently?
So my last question would be, how do you know when it's actual burnout or if you're just doing not necessarily all the wrong things, but maybe you also need to be delegating or automating more? How do you know the difference between like, okay, you have everything laid out right, you're doing all the right things, you're just burnt out and you need a break? Or do you need to step back and actually kind of reevaluate what's going on?
I don't know I'm gonna cause a little fire. I don't know if burnout is a real thing. I think lack of passion. I think that our passions change over time. If you look at my journey to becoming who I am today, I mean, this was never in the cards. Like, it was just never even like remotely. But as things evolved, as I met new people, as I learned new things, like it just became that. And I think passions change over day. You hear everyone say the midlife crisis, right? And I think that's okay. I think it's healthy to have that, like marriage. I'm not the same person that Kayla married 12 years ago, give or take. We all evolve. We evolve as people. We evolve as entrepreneurs. Did I ever think I would know everything there is to know about lashes? No, never. But I know it, right? So new things, new tech, new opportunities. And I think you have to figure out at that time, like, is this realistically my lane? When you're doing a startup, you can work 24 hours a day. You're excited to get up and jump into it and do those things. And there's no stopping. It's anytime we start a new project or we build like Mr. Pop or whatever these things are, like it's why I can do it in a weekend because it's all I'm thinking about. I'm so excited about it. I can jump in and do it. But when you're in that mundane, you have to start to question that maybe your passion is changing and what you thought was your end game is not, and it was just a launching pad to, and at that point, you start to look at, okay, how do I get an acquisition? How do I do, the bounce house industry? We were in it, did great, it grew great, all those things, and then we quickly realized what, like, became a little bit more than we expected, and we kind of moved on from that. We sold it, and we moved on, and it was a great time of our lives, arguably, some days, but, like, it's okay to accept that change and say, "Hey, this is where I have to go from here. This is the change I need to make, and it's time to move on," or double down and grow what you're in, fix the gaps, and allow it to at least run smoother so that you can have some me time and spend some of that. But I have watched many entrepreneurs who work from sunup to sundown 30, 40 years, and they are still going and thriving. And I can only relay that to still having a passion for what they're doing. Otherwise, you probably would be burnt out if you weren't passionate about it. Burnout, it can just be a giant pile of tasks that never should have been on your plate in the first place. It can be a myriad of things, or maybe you've just lost the passion for the industry you're in. But I think if your calendar is full, but your results aren't moving, it's time to reassess, not to necessarily give up, but reassess the business, reassess where you are. Thanks for hanging with us on the Growth Hack Franchise Marketing Unleashed. If this episode helped you rethink what's really draining your energy, hit follow, leave us a review, and send this to a friend who keeps saying, I'm just in a busy season for the third year in a row. See you next week.